On behalf of the family, welcome and thank you for coming to express your appreciation and gratitude for this family and to be able to share with them and to lift them up. It's never easy to see a loved one leave this life and go on to that next life, but it's common. And so it's always good to have friends and family, and we appreciate that. Good that you're here, and we appreciate those who may be viewing this service live stream, and especially we want to say hello again and thank you to the wife and mother and grandmother, mother-in-law, all of the other kind of things that go with that wonderful person. I'm privileged to be able to stand before you today and be the one that gets to recount some of the memories, some of the things that many of you are aware of and many of you have been part of over the years. And even as the song was singing and as some of the pictures that you may have seen and looked at last evening or other times, it seemed like somewhat of a destiny that a truck be in the life of Roy Sullivan. We know that the obituary points out, and I'll not spend too much time there because some of the other members of the family will come and they will express themselves in their own way, and I'll give them all the latitude to do that. But it just seemed like it appeared to be that way. I'll share just a couple of brief memories. I was not privileged to know Mr. Sullivan well, but I did know him. And I appreciated him very much. I enjoyed the humor, and I didn't see a lot of it, but I did see some of it. I guess our first encounter of friendship and being able to be acquainted was when he began to become a part of the Ponca City refinery in Conoco at that time, and was moving freight in and out and over to the port and other places. And so I was amongst that group of people that was around all the time, and so I got acquainted with him there. For a short period of time before we moved out of Ponca City, I became a member of the Rotary Club, and I got to get acquainted with him a little bit at that point. But there's one thing that always seemed to be very meaningful to me, and that is he was who he was. I don't think you need to stretch anything. We don't need to try to make any conversation about, well, things need to be expanded or reduced. It's just great to see people who they are. I will share with you that the family had a private burial service this morning with military honors. The fact that Roy was a Marine, and I did not get to serve or didn't choose to back in the day, but there's one thing that every Marine that I've ever been around reminded me of all the time. Once a Marine, always a Marine. And I believe that is true. There might be a connection that you will understand, and some of you that I see here probably have been, and I do know some, some have been at a funeral that I've been asked to lead on Friday. Well, this red shirt could mean several things. And those of you who know me will know what one of those things are. But red stands R-E-D, remember everyone deployed. And every Friday, those who are part of that association of remembering our military personnel wear red. I didn't know about the organization for a good many years, but then a nephew of mine told me about it, and that's been over 8 years ago, and I've not missed a Friday since wearing a red shirt. I do not believe we have the capacity today to understand the full extent and the benefit that our military personnel has provided to us over the years, and the freedoms, the things we enjoy, the liberties we have, we can attribute to those who served, regardless of where they served or what they did. And so this red shirt, in respect for Mr. Sullivan, is remember everyone deployed, both present and past. One of the things that I think is important is we address, as the writer of the book of James in the Bible wrote, in chapter 4, verse 14, a very simple question is asked: what is life? And we all will have a different bent, maybe, or a different opinion, or different experiences that will lead us to think in specific ways about that. But that's one of the things that occurs when we come to pay respect for one who has gone on before us. And we are almost duty-bound, it seems, to be able to think through and think about what is life. I've already mentioned that I think Mr. Roy Sullivan was a man of character, a man of enjoyment, a man who appreciated people, a man who appreciated his family. I don't think that Mrs. Sullivan would mind if I repeated what she shared with me just a short time ago out at the cemetery as she was sitting in the car and receiving the flag that was presented to her. And tearful-eyed, she said, I had him put on there, the sweetest man I ever knew. And that says a lot, doesn't it? Begins to talk about that character. Begins to reveal, even to those of us who may not be as well acquainted as others, who this person really was. And this person's life had meaning. I believe that one of the things we do in life is when we want to know the character of the family, we look at the parents. And those are somewhat indwelled, and those are some things that go to be able to help the family bind. And I have known the family for a lot of years, at least some parts of the family, and interacted a little bit over time with most everybody in the family. But I don't know that I've been with the family at a time like this that showed as much love and respect for their parents as this family has. And I think that's remarkable. I think it's something we might want to copy. What we're going to do here now at the request of the family, and obviously they have a lot of experiences they want to share. The sisters and the granddaughter are going to come according to their assignment of time to be here. And they're going to share some things, and I expect that I will learn some things I didn't know already. But I'm looking forward to it. Just because there may be lightheartedness and just because there may be humor and etc., it's not a show of disrespect. It's a show of the way a life was lived. I can't not talk about Popping Johnny, because I remember standing on the street down here in Ponca City waiting for ice cream. And you know, anybody that can make ice cream and serve it is pretty good people. Because the only thing better than ice cream is more ice cream. And I kind of stood in line for it. But I'm going to ask the family to come and share what's on their heart and minds, and we'll just listen and enjoy their presentation about Mr. Sullivan.
Okay, first of all, I'm the usually soft-spoken one. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Good afternoon. I appreciate everybody being here. I am Leslie, Roy's favorite oldest daughter. He also had a favorite youngest daughter and a favorite son. He also had a favorite wife who is listening in and watching on TV. And one thing in our family, we have this contest about earning daughter points. So this is my attempt. Okay. Hopefully she got that. It took me a lot of work. But from what I understand, there are about a dozen folks tuning in on TV. So, and of course, our mom is one of them. My font is a little bigger than I think the font that was on the obituary in the brochure. So, apologize for that. I guess we got a little bit wordy. But I'm just going to tell you about what life was like with my dad and maybe some of his history. First of all, Dad was born in Paris, Arkansas. Doesn't have quite the cosmopolitan flair like Paris, France, but it does have an Eiffel Tower. It's not as big, but it's impressive. And I feel that probably my dad growing up, or when he started going out into the world, he probably used that to woo women, like, I'm from Paris. You know, like maybe making himself out to be this international man of mystery or something. And then when they found out maybe he had a little bit of an accent that maybe wasn't quite French, then maybe he would admit that it was actually Paris, Arkansas. But if you met our dad as an adult, he would always say his name was Old Roy, like the dog food. And that was always, I didn't even know they had Old Roy dog food, but it checks out that there definitely is such a thing. But growing up, he had two names, Roy Jean. It was always Roy Jean or just Jean. And we didn't know that either until a chance meeting a couple of months ago. I was working early voting over in Benton County, Arkansas. And this older gentleman came in and said he needed to move his registration from Paris to Benton. And I said, well, my dad grew up in Paris. He goes, who's your dad? I said, Roy Sullivan. He goes, oh, Roy Jean? And it was John Paul Goodson, and he, I believe, may be on watching live today as well. So, but he said, yeah, he was always Roy Jean, and it was just kind of a neat. I know Paris wasn't that big, but it was just kind of neat to meet somebody who was a best bud with my dad growing up. And one thing that we knew but maybe didn't know is that my dad, when he graduated from high school, got a college football scholarship. Okay, it wasn't like OU, OSU, or anything, but still I found that pretty impressive, considering while we were growing up, he bragged that he played 3 positions on the high school football team: end, guard, and tackle. He sat at the end of the bench, guarded the water cooler, and tackled anybody who came close. Might be time to retire that joke. Yeah. But college didn't live up to his expectations, or maybe it was the other way around. But his parents had moved to Southern California, so Dad joined them out there. And that's where he enlisted in the Marines to see the world. And while he was in the Marines, he did a lot of, Marine training, but we learned that a lot of weapons training, and there were also endurance training that he underwent. So he graduates boot camp. They're ready, but there were no conflicts in the world. The Korean War had ended. There was some conflict in the Suez Canal, but that ended as well. So somebody higher up than Sergeant Sullivan decided that this ship full of randy Marines would just do a goodwill tour across South Asia, just stopping, going from port to port, spreading American goodwill. And Dad interesting, the ship landed or docked in like Pakistan, India, Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, Singapore, Brunei, South Korea, and Japan. So that was quite a tour. He joined the Marines to see the world, and it looks like he did. So he left the service at 22. We saw his discharge papers, and the Marines gave him $100. That's he put that in his pocket and ended up back in Southern California, and went to work for KEC Company, and that was a huge company, and they're still in business today. But they did landscaping, all of the medians and the highway, and they also got the job to landscape Fort Huachuca, Arizona. And so the crew went out there. In the meantime, our mom, Carolyn Martin, was down there working. She was a waitress in a cafe. Well, these guys, when you're landscaping, you're spreading a lot of manure. These guys would come into the cafe every day, reeking. But, I guess, I'm not for sure if that was the only place to eat or if maybe there was he was trying to woo my mom. But the story is that he flirted with Mom by leaving a penny tip in his water glass. I don't know how she got attracted to some cute guy who leaves her penny tips. But apparently he had some promise. He wooed her with such lines as, your eyes are like pools, cesspools. You have hair like a god darn old goat. And he still used these lines on Mom years later. But I guess that's how the courtships were back in the 50s. I don't know. But it worked. Mom and Dad fell in love, got married, had 3 wonderful kids who loved living near their paternal grandparents, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, the Pacific Ocean, and lots of Dad's cousins. But unbeknownst to us, Dad was restless, and on summer vacations, we would come to Ponca City, Oklahoma. Mom had a sister that lived here, and we had cousins, but he was secretly checking out opportunities to start his own business. And one thing that, when I was revisiting these memories, I-40 wasn't built back then. This is like mid-'60s, so we drove Route 66 the whole way, both ways. And it was a 2-lane road, and I remember some parts of it was cool enough to have the windows down. And I remember Daddy was driving, sitting behind him, and I'd have my arm out the window, and Daddy goes, Les, those cars going the other way, somebody in there can grab your arm and yank it off. And it just scared me. And to this day, whenever I'm driving along and I put my arm out, I bring it back because I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody's going to go the other way and yank my arm off. Just the things you tell your kids when they're little, it just sticks with them. But nobody grabbed my arm off. And but every summer we would come back to Oklahoma. But Dad had never driven an 18-wheeler, but he wanted to be a truck driver. So he was 32 years old, new in town, or I don't know that we actually lived here yet, and he went to a bank to get a loan to buy a truck. And somebody loaned him that money, and Sullivan Trucking Company got started. But I'm wondering if the bank examiners ever thought, wow, you gave a loan to somebody who doesn't really even live here and is young and wants to start a trucking company. But apparently there was a banker in town who did, which that's how it got started, just by one truck. We moved to Ponca City in the summer of 1967. And one thing I remember is that I had just finished first grade, And we went to school in the middle of June out in California, and they start here in the middle, like the beginning of August, and we thought we were ripped off because we didn't get a good summer. But the trucking company started as a small, family-run local company, one truck and trailer, painted Omaha orange. I'm sure glad that the only truck on the lot was orange and not red, but anyway. Mom and Dad, with the assistance of our brother, grew the business at the peak. It was 125 trucks. They ran nationwide and had satellite terminals in 4 states: Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. So that was, I remember driving towards Knoxville, Tennessee one time on I-40 and saw one of his trucks. They had Sullivans on the back of the trailer. So it was, I was all excited. I pulled up alongside and was honking and waving, and I'm not for sure which driver that was, but I'm sure they were wondering, because I think I still had Oklahoma plates on my car, so maybe they made the connection. But my parents took really good care of their employees, and they treated them like family. And perhaps the reason they treated these employees like family is because so many family members worked for them over the years. In addition to Mom and Dad, Sullivans hired 2 of their children, 4 grandsons, a son-in-law, 2 sisters-in-law, a brother-in-law, Dad's father-in-law, a cousin-in-law, and 2 of Dad's first cousins. That's 14 family members that were hired over the years. And to be honest, I worked for them too, but it wasn't by choice. In the spring of 1980, I was a sophomore in college. I had a job at a bank and did some financial planning and decided that I could live on $25 a week. I didn't need a job. Never mind, I had a $100 a month car payment, but anyway. Due to a slight miscalculation, I could not live on $25 a week and started using my emergency use only credit card. And I ran that credit card up to an astounding $500. Well, the payment came due. I didn't budget for that. So I asked my dad for the money to pay it off. And I should have known he was up to something because he readily agreed. Sure, I'll pay it off, and he did. My penance, I had to work as a gopher for the company, the parts department for that summer. Go for this, go for that. Talk about a gut punch to my dignity. I was a college co-ed, and now I'm going to have to run parts in a beat-up old truck. So I endured 3 months of being the butt of jokes with these from the shop guys. They had a lot of fun with me. I'd be given a list of parts and drive to the parts store, and the guys wouldn't let me give them my list of things I needed. They wanted me to read it. I would read it, they'd go fetch it. But some of these items were legit, and some of these weren't. And as soon as I'd read something that wasn't legit, these guys would just laugh. I never blushed so much in a summer in my life. Things that they sent me for: left-handed wrenches. Apparently there's no such thing. Blinker fluid. Elbow grease. 710 cap. If you turn it around, it spells oil. Muffler bearings. Johnson rods. Yeah. This went on all summer. These guys were so creative trying to send me after stuff, and I seriously think they were in cahoots with the parts guys. But I think I earned their respect because they gave me a nickname. Rainbow. I thought it was for my colorful personality and was really flattered. I was really touched by it until, anybody familiar with rainbow bread? Anybody recall what their slogan was? Rainbow bread, the 8-hour loaf. Yep, they considered me an 8-hour loaf of all that work I did all summer. And the wife of the gentleman who named me that is here today and called me Rainbow yesterday afternoon. And I can tell you, there's nothing like being at Walmart. There's a long aisle and hear, "Hey, Rainbow!" Yeah. So that was an interesting summer, and I guarantee you, if you ever saw my resume, that job is not listed. I did not want anybody calling Sullivan Trucking and getting a character reference. But whatever lesson my dad wanted me to learn, I learned. I got my job back at the bank, finished school, and never borrowed any more money from him. I asked Mom instead. But after my departure, Sullivan's continued in business until 2012, when just like 45 years they were in business, and Dad sold the company. And one thing that I always admired about my dad was that he was very civic-minded and sponsored many youth and adult sports teams through the years. It's been nice to see on Facebook people going, "Oh yeah, your dad contributed money so my team could go play state tournament and all that," because I wasn't around as much, after school, so I didn't know a lot of this. I knew he helped out, but I was impressed at how much he did help out. He was a longtime member of the Rotary Club, and I know he volunteered countless hours at the Ponkin Theater. And there was somebody here was here last night showing pictures of some of the costumes Dad had on, and I never knew that side of him. But then again, did anybody see the picture out front with the elf on the shelf, him grown up? So maybe that was his way of showing us he did have other skills. But Dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2015, and it has been difficult to watch the cognitive decline. But just when you least expect it, out comes a wisecrack. It's been a few months ago, I was home, and I was eating breakfast, and Dad came to the table and just looked totally disheveled, hair sticking up, he hadn't shaved. And I go, "Daddy, have you looked in the mirror this morning?" He chewed, swallowed, turned and looked at me and went, "Have you?" So, and laughter is a necessity with Alzheimer's, especially when your dad likes to sit on the front porch, and my folks live over by Woodland School. He would sit on the front porch and just start flipping off anybody who drove by, the lawn guys next door, the Amazon, the FedEx delivery people, all those mothers, parents sitting lined up down the street, waiting to pick up their kids. Yeah, that was my dad. If anybody ever heard of some older gentleman sitting on the porch flipping off cars. Laughter and laughing when you go to turn on the outdoor faucet and the knob is missing again. He had a drawer in his tool chest, his tool chest, that we found that's where he put them, but that wasn't always where he put them. He also had some obsession with locking the house up. You'd go out to the garage maybe to get something, come back and the door was locked. You go out, get something out of your car, came back, the door was locked. So, let me see. So I got my own set of keys. First set of keys I ever had to their house. I was 60 years old. But he got a hold of these one day, and I could not find them anywhere. So then he taunted me with them. "These what you're looking for?" So laughter, definitely, we couldn't find his wallet for a very long time, and Mom found it in the back of a drawer in the kitchen. So I'm guessing we will be finding plenty of things over the next year or so. And our mom's wish was that our dad live at home until the end, but we would not have been able to do it without, his kids helping and the caregivers that we had. Haley is home with my mom. She was there for, I want to say, like 18 months, and pretty much became part of the family. And my dad would just light up when she came over, and she was a tremendous help. And we also had Carol, who helped us tremendously as well, and Kim. And Hospice of North Central Oklahoma. We probably could have brought hospice in a little earlier. We weren't aware that of all their services, but they were a tremendous help. And one funny story with that is one of the nurse, I'm not for sure what the technical term was, but one of the hospice ladies came over, and she was trying to get Dad in the shower to take a shower. He thought she was trying to get in there with him. So every time she came over and she would try to get him to the shower, he'd be going, like he just thought they were going to get in there together. So that was that was funny to watch. But our dad was definitely one of a kind, and we grew up in a home with a lot of laughter and a lot of teasing from the sweetest man we've ever known. And I hope that somewhere along your journey that our dad brightened your day. And thank you again for coming. And Roy's favorite granddaughter, Shay, has some memories she would like to share.
Hello. I'm the favorite because I was the only one, so I just want to clarify that. It wasn't anything truly special I managed to do. But I'm Shay, and I am Roy's granddaughter. I'm Michelle's daughter, so thank you for being here today. And I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts and memories that I had. So I'll just read what I have written down. Growing up with a grandfather or a papa like mine was an experience I wish every child could have. I grew up 3 blocks away from him, all the way up until I moved away from college. As the only granddaughter, he took special care to ensure that I turned out to be a lady, whatever that means to a native Arkansan anyways. My papa was the kind of man who would buy a go-kart to keep his grandsons out of trouble, keeping them heavily occupied out at his shop. He employed all of his grandsons at one time or another as they grew up. I'm not sure if they gained any professional skills, but I do know they were always paid on time. As a child, my family was sure to go to every conceivable public outing, chili cook-offs, Oktoberfest, any kind of fundraisers. At most of those events, there was this cool old guy there making homemade ice cream with a John Deere tractor running the mechanisms. The ice cream was delicious, and all of my friends were so jealous that the ice cream guy was my grandpa. Even later on as a teenager, people would ask who my grandpa was, and I would say, the guy with the green ice cream making tractor, and they always knew who I was talking about. When my parents separated, my papa made sure to spend dedicated time with me so that I didn't feel an absence of adult attention or affection in my life. He took it upon himself to pick me up on Sundays, often going to see a play at the Ponkin Theater, and then we'd go get ice cream. I think back on that time now as an adult myself, and for him to understand what his granddaughter was going through, and for him to take it upon himself to be mentally and emotionally present for me is such a perfect example of his service to others. He found the perfect way to speak to my childhood heart, and while it meant quite a bit to me back then, it means even more to me now. His last large impact on me was his influence on my career. As a senior at Oklahoma State, visiting the career fair, I didn't shy away from the J.B. Hunt transportation recruiter like most of the other young women did. I thought, trucking, what's the big deal? That's what my grandpa does. I can do that. I didn't realize that my boldness in the transportation industry would set me apart and allow me to have a successful and reliable career for 10 years now. I'm forever grateful that I embraced a career that most women avoid. His 3 living grandsons, my cousins, all work in transportation as well. And I do want to acknowledge that Austin had a very extra special relationship with my grandpa. I think he kind of gravitated and got the hang of being a papa by the time us younger kids were around. The last 7 years have been hard watching so many vibrant pieces of him slip away. When the caretaking team got too tired or too thin over the last 2 years, I would come over and grandpa sit. The first time was in 2020, and my grandma Carolyn was in the hospital, so I stayed with Papa since she wasn't home. I sent my Mima a big, expensive floral arrangement and paid for it with my Aunt Leslie's credit card. When I told my Papa this, he bust out laughing. And since he had Alzheimer's, I had to constantly answer his inquiries about where everyone was, so I boiled it down to a quick story. Michelle's at work, and she'll come by for dinner. Carolyn's in the hospital, but she'll be home soon. Leslie's on vacation, so I used her credit card to buy flowers. Every time he belly laughed at the thought of my unauthorized spending. The way he would laugh at the information as if it were new each time also had me in stitches. Alzheimer's patients are an easy comedic crowd. We spent a lot of quality time sitting in the sun together, watching the birds, the squirrels, and the cats all play in the backyard. He was still him, even if he didn't know exactly which family member I was. He trusted me and was happy to hold my hand or play a game of footsie. I'm always grateful for the time that I was able to feed him, give him his medicine, keep him company, and make him laugh. He cared for me first, and I got to care for him in return. And I will always aim to show up for my community, friends, and family in the kind and humble way that he did. I like to think that by living in Arkansas, being married to a Southern Arkansas man, and working in transportation, and always eating too much ice cream, that I remember his legacy every day. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Baskin, and I am Roy's favorite youngest daughter. My dad was the best. I loved him very much. He was sweet, and he was kind, and he was very funny. Some of my earliest memories of him were when we lived in California. I was only 5 when we left there, so I don't always remember things, but I remember him working in the backyard, building a fence, and I remember him building flower beds for my mom. I also remember going to Salton Sea before it was polluted, and we would have family campouts there, and it was very fun. And then I also remember coming back to Oklahoma and Arkansas to see our family. When we moved to Ponca City, obviously, he started his trucking company and didn't have as much time, so we didn't get to see him a lot. But he would drive that truck all day long, and then he would come home at night and he would dispatch the trucks for the next day. He worked a lot. The hours were long, but it taught us all about how hard work pays off eventually. Sometimes during the summer months, my mother would send us with him. I think she got tired of us. But anyway, he didn't like to stop much. You know, a time is money to a trucker. So he wouldn't stop to feed us much or stop to go to the bathroom. But he would always say, well, baby, we'll stop in the next town. And we never really stopped in the next town. He just kept on driving. He would feed us. Do you all remember Certs? They were breath mints. Well, his favorite brand was fruit flavored, and he would feed me those to keep me quiet so I wouldn't be hungry. To this day, I can still smell those, and I still know what they tasted like. I don't like those very much, because, anyway, when I was little, I was afraid to be in the cab of the truck with my dad while he dumped the trailer. And so, thought I needed to clarify that, sorry. Anyway, I was afraid, and, you know, time is money to a trucker, and he never made me feel dumb because I was afraid. But he would stop that truck and he would get me out of the truck, put me down on the ground, go dump the trailer, unload the trailer, I'll say that better, unload the trailer, come back, park, get me and put me back in the truck, and off we'd go. I probably killed 15 minutes. And he did that for me because he loved me and I was afraid. And eventually I went with him enough that through his patience, I learned to stay in the cab, but he knew I was afraid, and he took the time to make me feel safe, and I will always remember that. My dad had a funny way of teaching us things, like making my sister work all summer. He did not like to hear you eat. So we would be sitting at the dining room table, and he would say, baby, I just love to hear you eat. And I would like, well, thank you, Daddy. And he'd say, no. People don't want to hear you eat. He was just correcting my table manners by saying that. I just love to hear you eat. I still use that a lot. I don't like to hear people eat either. So people shouldn't hear you eat. You should not smack. Another thing, Leslie and I shared a bathroom with him. So every morning he would go in there and shave, and we were not supposed to leave our eyeglasses in the bathroom. He never said anything to us. He would just take his shaving cream and rub our eyeglasses all over. And then we didn't get up till like 3 hours later, so it was hard as a rock, and it was, anyway. But he didn't have to say anything. We knew that we weren't supposed to do that, and I liked the way that he got his point across to us, because it did take a while to get all that shaving cream off. He also did not like it when we tattled. Ooh, he didn't like that. So one time my dad was watching us 3 kids and my 2 cousins while my mother and Aunt Glenda went out of town. My sister hit my cousin Tammy, and Tammy ran and told my dad, and my dad told her, "You go tell her to hit you again." So Tammy ran back, and said to Leslie, "Your dad said to hit me again." So Leslie hit her again. So Tammy ran back and tattled to my dad again. And this went, he kept saying, "Well, you tell her to hit her again." So anyway, this went on for a while, and my cousin finally figured out that Uncle Roy wasn't going to do anything about it, and that she needed to quit tattling, because if she kept tattling, Leslie was going to keep hitting her. We also, when we got in trouble, he would tell us we were grounded. And if he just said it, we knew it wasn't true. We were like, oh yeah, ha. But if he said, "You are grounded," and he would stomp his foot, GROUNDED, grounded, we knew we were in trouble. It was going to be at least a week till we got out of that one. But we knew when he spelled it that he was mad. He taught me a lot. He taught me how to drive a stick shift car, how to back a boat trailer and launch a boat. He taught me lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, never shake a person's hand sitting down, the value of hard work, and this was the most important because he didn't like to stop and let us use the restroom. He taught me how to properly use the restroom outside, which is to make sure the wind is in your face so your feet don't get wet. He taught me also how to be kind and to have compassion for people. My dad would often say to me, "Baby, I'm so proud of you." And that meant the world to me, that he was proud of me. He was proud of the person I was and the person I became and the job that I did. Truthfully, my dad would have been proud of me if my job was picking up sticks. That's the kind of man he was. He was just proud of us. But it means the world to me to know that he was proud of me. As my dad's Alzheimer's disease got worse, our roles reversed. And instead of him taking care of me, I had the privilege of taking care of him. He remained sweet and kind and was so very grateful. I would shave his face and he would say, "Baby, thank you. Thank you for taking care of me." And he was grateful for anything that we ever did with us, for him. And also, he never forgot who we were. He remembered us to the very end. And he for some reason, he remembered David, my husband, a lot. But he didn't remember owning a trucking company, but he remembered his family. And that just always meant the world to me. When I was 25, I had called out to say hi to Daddy, and somebody told me that I was too old to call my dad Daddy. But that's what he was. He wasn't a father. He was not a dad. He was a daddy. And I am a lucky, lucky girl to have had him as my daddy, rather. That's all. Thank you all, and thank you for coming.
I'm going to lead us in a prayer of thanksgiving. Thanksgiving for all of the things that has been shared with us today and some of the things that hasn't. There has to be more. And I simply say and encourage you as a family, keep it up. Keep on going. Keep on doing. Because that's what I think both your daddy and your good mother would think you ought to be doing. Would you pray with me? Lord God, we do thank you for families. Thank you for love, expressive love, love that is assured and not questioned. Thank you for parents who take that time to be able to mold their children in the patterns of accountability and responsibility and trust. And Lord, we seek to reclaim in our current day some of those values. And so we ask that you help us to allow this to be an example for us. As we go from here and continue with our lives, we pray, Father, that we not forget you, that we recognize you as the true creator of all mankind, and that you are the true support, strength, guide, protector. All of those things that we need, you provide. Bless this family and thank you for them. And again, we ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.